You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
There's going to be some testy moments, no?
There could be quite the culture in that dressing room.
No kidding.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the 2 and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty.
Hunters are people, too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. It's game day, baby. Let's go. Week 1 has arrived. I'm on 3.5 hours of sleep. Brazilian Ty is on 38 hours of sleep. I think we're ready.
I think so. I'm not at 100%. I wouldn't say all 8 cylinders are firing, but enough to get us around the track.
We got a lot to get to, so let's go. This episode of 2 and Out brought to you by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider in Alberta, offering internet, electricity, and natural gas with low rates, awesome service, and they've got profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your internet, electricity, and natural gas from. If you choose Park Power, you're choosing a positive local business. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with those local not-for-profits. You actually get to choose which one you would like to support when you sign up. They're working on making a difference for their communities, and you can help them do just that. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kozowski, and we love local at the Alberta Podcast Network, so of course it's a great fit. You can learn more at parkpower.ca.
In the Huddle with Currah and Ty on the 2 and Out podcast.
All right, it feels real now. We've got the list, the top 50 CFL players heading into the season. I gotta say, I do not envy whoever came up with this list. No. I have a hunch that next year's list is going to look completely different. But for the first time in a while, a non-quarterback is headlining here. Brandon Banks, the number 1 CFL player. I gotta say, pretty tough to disagree with that, Ty.
Yeah. I mean, there's other guys that could get it, but I mean, out of the group of 4 or 5 that could be number 1, I don't think you're going to have any qualms with any one of those guys being named the number 1 player in the CFL. I mean, this guy's electric. Every time he touches a ball, it's a chance to score. Now that they finally figured out, it took them how many years to, get him involved in the offense, and the last couple have just been a beauty to watch. So, I mean, not a huge surprise, not a lot of arguments. Arguments could be made for, a couple other guys to be number 1, but like I said, any one of those guys is named number 1, and I think that top 5, top 4 is, pretty indistinguishable right now.
You know what? It's really an interesting point there, because when I'm sitting here right now, it almost feels like Brandon Banks has been doing this for a decade at receiver. Mm-hmm. But no, he really, it was about halfway through 2017 when June Jones was there that he really and finally got an opportunity in the offense, and he's been getting 1,000 yards since then.
Yeah, and I mean, what before that, his most memorable play, and I know it kind of sounds bad, but like the return getting called back in the Grey Cup. Why are they kicking to him in that point? Because you know what he can do. So, I mean, even back then, you knew that he had this capability, but now that he, like you said, halfway through 2017, he gets that chance in the offense, and it's just been all systems go since the start.
CFL earlier this week announcing a cancellation policy for games during this season. If a game can't be played as scheduled because of COVID-19 issues, and it can't be rescheduled, and one club is suffering from the issues, that club will forfeit the game and be assigned a loss, while its opponent will be credited with a win by a score of 1-0. Gotta love a win by a Rouge, right? And if both clubs are suffering from the COVID issues, then both clubs will forfeit the game and be assigned a loss. Now, here's the thing. If in both of these circumstances, if a team can prove that 85% of its players under contract have been vaccinated at least once and hopefully fully vaccinated, its players will receive their salary for the canceled game. If the team is below that 85% threshold, the entire team will not receive its salary. Talk about incentive, man. You got to imagine if, 83% of the team's vaccinated and they lose a game check because of 17% of the guys, there's going to be some testy moments, no?
There could be quite the culture in that dressing room.
No kidding. You're getting on board now. It's the word of 2021, baby.
Join 2 and Out for CFL Fantasy and CFL Pick'em and show Currah and Ty what you got.
They are who we thought they were.
Just click cflfantasy.tsn.ca
Enough of talking about it. There has to be consequences.
and pick'em.cfl.ca.
Let's start with Thursday Night Football. It's the Winnipeg Blue Bombers against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. The Ticats beat the Bombers twice during the 2019 regular season, but they did not beat them when it mattered most. I do want to mention a really cool announcement from the Tiger Cats, the launch of the Ticats Audio Network. Yes, they've got games airing on AM 900 CHML, but they put together this honestly, it looks amazing. It looks unreal for fans of Tiger Cats football. They're going to have 5 hours of game day programming. You look at the names involved in this. I mean, you were wondering what Luke Tasker was going to do. Well, he's going to be doing the play-by-play with RJ Broadhead. Andy Fantuz is going to be taking part in this. Brody Lawson's going to be taking part in this. Mike Moriali, Rob Hitchcock, Bakari Grant, Courtney Stephen is in this. This is really cool, and maybe this is the future of what sports teams are going to be doing to get content to their fans. This looks really cool.
And I think that's been the biggest downfall of the CFL is on game day, a lot of teams, you're going through Regina. The minute you wake up, it's rider coverage, right? Especially on a game day.
They're lucky there, yep.
Right,
Yep.
It's nuts. Now, 5 hours of game day coverage in Hamilton. It's just something that, like you said, the fans now have something brought to them and more content and just another way to reach a fan bases that, sometimes trying to get stuff off the website or trying to find, stats and highlight packs and stuff like that, it can get frustrating on the CFL website and even on some of the team websites. They put out a thing every day or every other day with a coach or whatever, but to have that much time dedicated to game day coverage is just something else.
Yeah, if you're not going to get the coverage from traditional media, make it yourself.
Yep.
And I think the fans will absolutely appreciate that. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers getting prepared to raise that 2019 Grey Cup banner. It's been so long. I know they're excited for it, and I'm sure the Ticats can't wait to see that banner raised.
Yeah, I've seen people upset about this, that they're doing it while the Ticats are there.
I don't understand what they want Winnipeg to do, to baby the Ticats and feel bad for them. I don't get it.
You do it at your home opener. That's it. It's not their fault that the league scheduled them against Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And if you're upset about it, shut the hell up, because who cares what you think? That's where I'm at. That's the dumbest thing to be upset about I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's it feels good to be upset or hearing dumb stories about this again, but at the same time, I'm just as annoyed.
Yeah, just roll my eyes, and it's here we go again.
Man, I'm excited to see injury reports. Look, I know that teams don't need to release the game status of a player until the day before the game. But practice doesn't lie, man. If there's a player listed as did not practice for 3 days, I would say it's pretty safe to bet that probably not going to be seen in the field. And this is big. In the CFL, there's been a lot of gamesmanship, especially on closed practice day, blah, 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 hiding the fact that guys are practicing, hiding their status. This is really big, I especially if they want to be transparent for the betting. I know they signed up with BetRegal.net. I mean, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I legit tried to sign up for the website. It keeps saying my login failed. I pressed the forgot password. It looks like a website that's new to people. But either way, if they want betting to take off, then this needs to be a thing, and I think it's off to a pretty good start, Ty.
Yeah, and I mean, the list just keeps growing every day, it seems, which isn't surprising considering that it's football. But at the same time, it's like I thought we weren't having pads and stuff in practice.
A lot of them don't seem like contact injuries.
No, so I mean a lot of non-contact stuff. But like you said, you have to be if you want to make money off the betting and gambling and stuff, you have to be transparent because you can bet on a game on it. Like you can bet on the Thursday nighter if you want to do like a weekend parlay. Well, now you got to wait till the morning of basically to make sure all your ducks are in a row. Because you have no idea what those teams have been doing that week in practice and who's practiced and who hasn't. And it's just annoying. It's a long time coming. I'm surprised it took this long. It's kind of a joke that it took this long, but we're here and they're all, the practice reports. I mean, did not practice, limited, whatever it is. It's nice to see, and you can kind of get a feel for what the team's going to be looking like come game day.
It'll help fantasy as well. Of course, you can join us on the website there, CFL Fantasy. You can join us for Pick'em. You can just search the 2 and Out group and have fun with us all season long. When it comes to that, it still takes work. You still need to look at the injury reports on CFL.ca. I would look at the depth charts that the teams release the day before the game just to make sure you're good to go. Sometimes those can fool you a little bit as well, but it's good to have as much information as you can. They do need to be able to integrate this with the fantasy website to make it as good as possible. If that information on there stays updated, that will get a thumbs up from me.
They also need to completely overhaul that system.
Let's go with the Hamilton Tiger Cats at practice this week. No Braylon Addison. He hasn't practiced. He hasn't been ruled out at the time of recording. By the time you hear this, it's probably a good chance that he will not be playing. Devere Posey has been ruled out for the game. If you had to pick a starting 5 at receiver for the Ticats, it's probably Brandon Banks, Jalen Acklin, Marcus Tucker, David Ungerer, Jalen Marshall maybe. But again, look at those depth charts as they're released. Jalen Acklin might be a pretty nice pick for your fantasy team. As far as the CFL fantasy prices, he's under $4,000, and if he's the number 2 target in that offense, I don't mind that at all.
No, averaging 8.6 points per game, only 1.3 against Winnipeg. But I mean, you look at where he's been on the depth chart, it's kind of tough to get those looks when you're the 4th, 5th option in an offense. That being said, Winnipeg also allows the most points to wide receivers. That was 2019, so I mean, a lot has changed, but those are the numbers we have to go off of. So, like you said, as a second option behind Brandon Banks, there's a lot of upside there, especially for under $4,000.
Yeah, because if you pick up Brandon Banks, he's more than 33% of your fantasy or your budget, and that's not a good way to build a real life team. And
how's that working out for the Oilers?
But I was looking at 2019, and the Bombers were able to hold Brandon Banks in check over the last 36 games, he's averaged 100 yards. That's his average. It's phenomenal what he's able to do, but the Bombers held him to 48 yards in one game. They held him to 72 in the Grey Cup. I mean, without Braylon Addison, I know there's some talent in the receiving core, but it makes it a little bit easier, even though the Bombers lost some contributors in the secondary. Richie Hall has shown that he's been able to scheme and maybe able to hold Banks in check a little bit.
Yeah, and that might just be a one-off. He has averaged 15.2 points against Winnipeg. So, I mean, for $14,000, that's
good.
Pretty decent. That's 0.5 points lower than his average. So, I mean, if they keep doing it, then it might not just be the anomaly. But like you said, Richie Hall knows how to run a defense. We've seen it for years. And then you got a guy like Braylon Addison too, 12.4 against Winnipeg, 16.3 overall. I mean, if the numbers go like they say they are, or that we have from 2019 at Winnipeg per game allowed 56.3 points to wide receivers.
Wow.
So there is ample opportunity for these guys to put up some numbers.
It was hard to rush the ball against them, and
it still will be.
You know what? The Bombers did give up yards, but they would force turnovers, and maybe that's easier said than done if you can protect the ball against that team. One situation that I think Ticats fans are really watching is Chris Van Zyl has been limited and banged up at practice. He looks to me to be questionable for the game, but either way, the Ticats don't have CFL experience at left tackle. Trayvon Tate might be the guy starting, has never started a CFL game, but Ty, that is Willie Jefferson territory.
Yeah. Do you remember the 2019 Grey Cup?
It was all him. He destroyed Hamilton's offense.
Yeah. And if you're going to start a rookie, you're in a lot of trouble. Look at how he made Chris Van Zyl look.
Exactly. And he had a big night at the CFL Awards earlier that Grey Cup week.
Which surprised nobody.
Don Jackson has been limited at running back all week. Maybe this is Sean Thomas Erlington territory. I kind of want to avoid the Ticats running backs until we get some clarity. What about you?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Don Jackson, like I said, limited, but only 4.9 points per game against Winnipeg. Malik Irons and Sean Thomas Erlington are at 6.2 and 6.3. Not a lot of upside. And Winnipeg only allowed 11.6 points per game to running backs. So, like, it just sets up to avoid that situation entirely. And then, when Sean Thomas Erlington scores 2 touchdowns and rushes for 100 yards, we'll be called idiots.
As for Winnipeg, Andrew Harris, Darvin Adams, serious danger of missing week 1. I guess let's start with running back. Brady Oliveira and Johnny Augustine look like the ones to split carries. I would say Oliveira, the one getting the bulk of the work here, but the Hamilton Tiger Cats, I know we shout out Winnipeg's defensive line. That's a strong D line in Hamilton, and it is cliche, but the trench battle in Winnipeg Hamilton is going to be one to watch here. Remember, Oliveira is the one that beat out Johnny Augustine for the backup spot in 2019 before getting hurt. Augustine carried the load when Harris got suspended in 2019. They've got some good options there, and when I'm building a fantasy team, we'll get into this a little bit later, anytime you can get a cheap option at running back, I think that's a good way to go. I mean, especially with our Winnipeg's offensive line and the way they've run an offense the last few years, I can't imagine this year being much different.
And a cheap option that's going to play, and especially with, like you said, Harris probably not going to play this week. Augustine averaging 7.1 points per game against Winnipeg 3.7. Oliveira obviously zeros across the board, but I mean if Augustine or Oliveira are going to get the bulk carries and we can figure that out, or if they're going to split, it kind of takes a little bit of the value away. It's only $25K, but I mean that if you got to find value somewhere. It's tough to pick one until we see who's going to be starting, but at the same time, that doesn't mean much if you're going to run a tandem in the backfield just to kind of lighten the load on these two guys and just wait for Harris to be healthy.
We'll see how the offense runs this year.
Well, they're going to have to because they're not going to pass the ball.
Well, I mean, how different is it going to be with Buck Pierce leading the charge instead of Paul Lapalisse? Lapo found a way, I thought, to work Nick Dembski into the game plan beautifully. It seemed like he was doing something different every week. He was all over the field. How do you like maybe going with him? Sometimes you got to hope for the touchdown with Dembski, but it doesn't seem like a crazy proposition for him to have one either.
No, it doesn't seem crazy. You can take a flyer on him, averaging 6.1 against Hamilton, 7.2 overall. There's only one receiver on this Winnipeg team that averages double digits against Hamilton, and that's Kenny Lawler. So truly the king. And with Darvin out, it looks like, I mean, it kind of bumps everybody up one. Maybe Dembski becomes your second option, and like you said, a touchdown doesn't seem that crazy with him because we've seen him in the red zone. Like he can be pretty slippery, and he doesn't even have to see a ball to catch it. So, if you want to take a flyer on him, I don't hate it. It just worries me with his averages right now.
Kenny Lawler does look to be the number one target for Zach Collaros in week 1. Let's talk Friday night football. The Saskatchewan Roughriders against the BC Lions. The BC Lions winless against the West in 2019. But this is still a tough situation to walk into, a sold-out Mosaic Stadium. Rider Nation's been waiting a long time for this. It's going to be a rocking house.
It's full of heathens. It's going to be nuts.
Friday night under the lights? I mean, come on.
It's not even fair.
The Riders have strengths at receiver. It looks like the starting 5 probably going to be Mitch Picknett, Kyron Moore, Shaq Evans, Braden Linnaeus, and Jordan Williams-Lambert. There is a lot of hype surrounding Braden Linnaeus, and as of right now, he's $2,500 on CFL Fantasy. Now, if you put him in and he doesn't do much for you because Shaq Evans goes off for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, don't get mad at that. But at $2,500, it might be worth throwing it out there if you want to fit in somebody expensive like Brandon Banks or something like that.
Well, and you mentioned Shaq Evans going off. Kyron Moore averaging 13.5 points a game against BC, which is the highest out of that wide receiver core in Saskatchewan right now. And averaging 12.3 points per game as well, which is the highest. He puts up numbers because teams focus in on Shaq Evans, so it opens up a lot of options everywhere else, which, trickles down to a guy like Braden Linnaeus. Real small sample size, obviously, only 0.9 points against BC, but, I mean, if everybody else is going to get doubled and looked at like they need to shut them down, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for other guys that you don't usually see.
Do you see this game being all William Powell? I look early last season, the Riders were giving Powell the ball 20 times a game. They were giving it to him a lot, and there's not much experience in BC's front seven with a offensive line in Saskatchewan that has some fans worried due to all the departures in the offseason.
But then, you look at the departures of the D-line in BC, so maybe this game is the one that levels everything out.
To me, it's just run at BC, get that offensive line engaged, and beat them up a little bit. That's what it looks like this game should be to me.
William Powell averages 23.1 points against BC.
And that includes his career with Ottawa?
Yeah.
That's big.
That's massive. Especially when his average against the entire league is 15.8. Like, it's a little nuts. I think it's going to be, feed him the ball, get that running game kind of established. And if they're up big, I don't see them continually giving the ball. I think, a guy like Keenan LaFrance comes in or somebody like that and takes some carries away later on in the game just to save Powell. Because if you're up by, 15, 20 points, there's no point in killing your number one guy.
As for BC, Michael Riley has been limited. He's expected to play Friday night against the Riders, and they're going to need to protect him better. That is the most obvious statement of the season here. And I remember last year thinking, man, this might be a high-flying offense. Brian Burnham, Deron Carter. The Carter thing didn't play out. But I look at this receiving core now, and I see, there's some upside in BC. Brian Burnham, just under 1,500 yards last year. Dominique Rhymes, who I want to mention here, had 1,000 yards with Ottawa last year. Mm-hmm. And if you saw what he did against Saskatchewan with Ottawa,
it's there.
Over 2 games, 15 catches, 264 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Against the rest of the league, he averages 8.7 points per game. Against the Riders, 13.5. I mean, those 2 games really bumped up numbers, but that's a pretty substantial discrepancy. Brian Burnham, just your consummate number one in BC. I don't think there's any argument there. Averaging 15.9 against the Riders, 13.9 overall. Even a guy like Lucky Whitehead you got Lucky Whitehead and Chris Rainey there. So, the return game, who knows who's going to get the bulk there. I feel like it's going to be Rainey if Cooper's going to start. But, either one of those guys can take one back. It's just one of those things where 2019, they didn't have a good return game. It seemed they were always behind the 8 ball. So this can totally turn around, make their offense, make it a lot easier for their offense. And you got a guy like Michael Riley back there who is arguably probably top 3 quarterbacks in this league still, and the ability to put up numbers. And he's got a receiving core now where if the offensive line keep him upright, they can put up some gaudy numbers.
Well, and it creates opportunity for the rest of the receiving core because Brian Burnham, and he still comes down with it.
If he's not double teamed every snap, then your defensive coordinator's not doing his job.
And he still comes down with the ball. That's right? The impressive part.
That's the crazy part.
Lamar Durant had over 800 yards receiving last year. It was one of the biggest years. Well, it was the most productive year of his career. He's coming into his age 28 season. I like what this year is looking like for Lamar Durant. And Shaq Johnson really came on late in 2019. Another Canadian there that I think could have another nice season, of course, with the caveat of the offensive line.
Yes, Shaq Johnson's averaging 7 points per game against Saskatchewan, 5.6 overall. You throw in a touchdown, and that jumps it up a bit, right? Like it's one of those things where, like you said, if the offensive line holds up, there's going to be a lot of trickle down. If Brian Burnham and somebody like Shaq Johnson, they're going to take the brunt of the coverage. Somebody like Lamar Durant or Dominique Rhymes or somebody like that can get a bigger opportunity than they normally see.
And I really like BC's starting running back here, Shaq Cooper. Got to watch him a few times in the stands last year in Edmonton, and I really like what he has. And the Lions, they probably want to score early to try and get the Rider fans shutting up a little bit.
And they don't want to be chasing the game either because they did that a lot in 2019.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably best if they run at Saskatchewan as well. Some new faces in the linebacking core, losses on the defensive line. I think to keep the BC Lions offensive line hitting the Rider defense, running at them would be a good way to do that too.
Yeah, if you can, run directly at the defensive line and that front seven and play physical and beat them down, it's just going to make it way easier for you later on in the game.
Last year against Saskatchewan, he did start a couple games in a row. He averaged over 5 yards a carry and had double-digit carries with the Elks in 2019. Let's go to the first half of the Saturday night doubleheader. It's the Stamps and the Argos with I guess maybe Stamps East versus Stamps West. Juwan Brescison,
more or less, yep.
Eric Rogers, Devaris Daniels, Nick Arbuckle, Charleston Hughes, Cordero Law, and more, including Ryan Didwitty, returning to McMahon Stadium to play the Calgary Stampeders. You telling me those guys don't have something they want to prove?
I don't think that's up for debate. The only issue I see is them actually, week one going out there and being perfectly in sync. I mean, you got a guy like Bo Levi who still lose Eric Rogers and Juwan Brescison out of that group, but I mean, Bo's been throwing to Kamar Jordan and Hergy Mayaga and Josh Huff. Like, the continuity in that receiving core in Calgary, I think that's what puts them ahead a little bit. I know Toronto looks that good on paper, but I just don't see it week one.
Corey Greenwood was back practicing for the Stampeders after not practicing during training camp. I got to say that's a solid veteran move, Ty.
Oh, yeah, we'll call it that.
Bo Levi Mitchell looks to be good to go. He had some tightness in his groin this training camp, but it looks like he's fully good to go after shoulder surgery in the offseason. He's already hooked his offensive line with some Oakley shades. One of them, the pairs that he was giving out, man, they looked like Randy Savage shades. Some of those guys doing the ooh yeah in 2021. One situation I'm also wanting to watch this game here is that Eucombre Williams, one of the most versatile offensive linemen in the CFL, playing for the Calgary Stampeders, doesn't get talked about enough. He might be moving out the left tackle here. Look, I know Charleston Hughes is 37 years old. Him coming back to McMahon Stadium, I don't want to say
Williams is in for a battle.
That's it. He's got a matchup here, and he's going to want to protect his quarterback, but he's also got a defensive lineman that really wants to sack that quarterback because Bo is one of his favorite quarterbacks to get to ever since he left Calgary.
And, I think most of the league enjoys watching Bo Levi Mitchell get sacked, so I think there'll be a lot of Charleston Hughes fans on the weekend.
This is a fascinating game. If you look at the starting five receivers for Calgary, it's Josh Huff, Kamar Jordan, Markeith Ambles, Hergy Mayala, and then it looks like either Colton Hunchak or Richard Sindani. Sindani was listed on the injury report with an illness there. I actually think there's some opportunity here. It's just all about picking the right one. Which one is Bo going to be in sync with that week? And sometimes that is the toughest thing to do. But there's some value with guys like Mayala, Ambles, and Huff here. They're not very expensive early in the year.
So Ambles, 7.6 against Toronto. Josh Huff, 11.9. Hunchak, 10.9. Kamar Jordan, 15. Hergy Mayala, 5.5. But, Mayala's average against the entire league is 10.4. And Markeith Ambles is 10.8. So if you can pick the right one, you got the chance to put up a lot of numbers. Toronto in 2019, 59.2 points per game allowed against wide receivers. So
I still think their secondary is an area that can be exploited by teams.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. And, when you got somebody like Bo Levi Mitchell in this receiving core, it could just be another day, another ho-hum day at the office for Bo Levi. And if his offensive line can keep Charleston Hughes and those guys at bay, Drake Nevis, he could have no issue putting up big numbers.
Kadeem Carey, the one carrying the ball in the backfield for the Stampeders. Toronto Argonauts, Kadero Law and Drake Nevis are actually dealing with some injuries on the D-line. So maybe Calgary will try to run at them a little bit here. It's an area that they struggled with in 2019, but still, Enoch Bwamba, Cam Judge in the linebacking core. Not really easy team.
Not exactly who I want to meet 3 yards from the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't look like, if I had to guess, we're going to see the Nick Arbuckle and Stampeders matchup just yet. Ryan Dinwiddie hasn't wanted to name a starting quarterback, but the hamstring issue, I think that McLeod Bethel-Thompson is going to get the chance to start the season for the Toronto Argonauts here.
And, averaging 10.9 points against Calgary, it's not a huge surprise when you look at the team that they've had. And McLeod Bethel-Thompson has had his struggles. But I think, like you said, with Arbuckle, with the hamstring issue, there's no point in rushing him when you have somebody who's started games before. Give him that little bit of extra rest and make sure he's 100% before you throw him in that lineup.
He's got some nice big receivers to throw to in Davaris Daniels, Eric Rogers, Joanne Breskison, Ricky Collins, and Levi Noel. I think Noel has earned playing time with the Argos, and I think he's going to start the season in the starting group. I'm excited to see what that team can do if they can come together. That's the biggest question for the Argos heading into Saturday night. But McMahon Stadium, never an easy place to start a season.
No, it is no fun to be there as a player or a fan. So
exactly. Saturday night, the last game of Week 1, the Edmonton Elks and the Ottawa Red Blacks. The Elks handing out 35,000 free T-shirts. They've got $3.75 hot dogs, an online 50-50. Let's go.
I am booking flights. Totally worth it for the hot dogs.
You know what? I think Elks fans look at this injury report and they just say, oh, no.
Yeah.
The two offensive tackles didn't practice Tuesday. I acknowledge still a couple days of practice to go at the time of recording, but Sir Vincent Rogers missing early in the week. Kyle Saxlid. The Elks need these guys on the field for that offense to succeed at its highest capability.
I know Trevor Harris gets rid of the ball really quick.
Yep.
But if he's constantly under pressure, eventually they're going to get to him. So they need to figure out that offensive line. If the guys are healthy and they can play, then so be it. But with the injuries and the practice reports and everything like that, it's looking like they're going to have to figure something out, and I don't envy that decision because it's really easy to make the wrong one on the offensive line.
Looks like the starting receiver group could be Darrell Walker, Greg Ellingson, Armani Edwards, Mike Jones, Tavon Smith. Walker and Ellingson, wow. Two of the best receivers in the CFL over the last little while here.
You have two number ones there, really.
Yeah, exactly. If Harris has time to throw, he will absolutely pick apart your defense. If I had to have a knock on those guys, though, it's really interesting with Greg Ellingson. 5 touchdowns each of the last 2 years. He had 12 in 2017 with Ottawa. Darrell Walker had 6 scores in 2019 with Toronto. These guys...
But now they have an offensive coordinator who's probably going to be able to finish drives.
These guys are going to want to get into the end zone more instead of just working out Sean White's leg, right?
You would think. Still Darrell Walker, 11.8 against Ottawa, 17.1 overall. Greg Ellingson, 10.7 against Ottawa, 14.1 overall. And you can throw Armani Edwards in there, 14.8 against Montreal and averaging 12.3 against the rest of the league. Like, even with the lack of touchdown production coming from, they're still putting up double-digit numbers per game. And I don't know if there's a wrong pick out of those two, because any one of those three can put up 100 and a touchdown. You just got to pick the right one for that week.
I'm really wanting to watch James Wilder Jr. this year. Can he regain what he was in 2017? Ottawa's got quite the feisty front seven, but if their offense can't stay on the field, then you can wear down any defense.
100%. And James Wilder Jr. averaging 14.5 throughout his career, 16 points per game against Ottawa. And a lot of that came when he was in Argo. So, I mean, a lot of that, you can look at that and being like, oh, that could probably be a little bit higher, just considering the crap they were going through in Toronto at the time. But if they're going to hold on to the ball for 40 minutes a game, or 40 minutes on offense that night, I mean, I don't know what Ottawa's defense is going to be able to do, because they're going to be so wore out. And he'll run right at you. Or he'll run around. Like, he can do both, so...
Matt Nichols has been practicing for Ottawa. He is their only hope. And it's almost 2 years to the day that he played his last game. He had a 15-5 touchdown to interception ratio before going down in 2019. That sort of ratio is going to be crucial to Ottawa. They need to protect the ball. That is gotta be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth thing in their top 5 duties as an offense this year.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, but I think they got the right quarterback to do that with. He doesn't make a ton of bad decisions. That being said, I just don't see this offense being able to sustain a lot.
Yeah. The starting 5 receivers look to be R.J. Harris, Anthony Coombs, Jordan Smallwood, Daniel Peterman, Ryan Davis. If you look in the backfield, Brendan Gillanders, Timothy Flanders, the guys carrying the ball. Nate Bahar might be getting some action here and there in the receiving core. I don't know if I feel good about any of these players in my fantasy lineup, Ty.
R.J. Harris averaging 10.3 points per game, 16.7 against Edmonton. But I just don't trust him with Matt Nichols. I just don't see those big numbers coming back. And then everybody else other than Araujo Lopez is under 7 points per game. So I mean, there's not a lot of upside to anybody. Maybe R.J. Harris if you want to take a flyer and hope, but man, it's just so bleak.
I do think they'll be ready Saturday night against Edmonton, and they'll be hitting hard. Edmonton's going to know they're going to be in a game.
Oh yeah,
I will say that. Let's roll through at least my fantasy lineup for this week here. What's your strategy? I think over the past couple of years, especially as the season goes on, as soon as I can jump on a really cheap running back, that's kind of where I like to go, because unless he's scoring touchdowns or he's really proficient in the receiving game, you need a lot of yards from your running back to make it up with a receiver, because they're getting points every single catch that they make. So I like to go cheap at running back. I do like to get a quarterback and one of his receivers as a combo a little bit. And as far as defense goes, Ty, I'm probably going to pick anybody playing Ottawa right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I mean, that was one of the easiest. That was the first position I filled out. Was defense on my lineup.
Build around your defense in week 1.
Yeah, pretty easy.
You know what? Defenses are going to be ahead of offenses this year, and it might be a season that starts off with lots of turnovers. So if you get the right defense, you might be scoring a lot of points in that position. My lineup for this week looks like Trevor Harris, Shaq Cooper for the Lions, Brady Oliveira for the Bombers, Greg Ellingson matching him up with Trevor Harris, Hergy Mayala there. He's only about $5,500. And Lucky Whitehead in my flex position as the Elks are in defense on the CFL Fantasy website. I got about $250 left over. What's your lineup looking like, Ty?
Obviously, Trevor Harris. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. James Wilder Jr., Johnny Augustine. That could change once depth charts come out. Greg Ellenson and Armani Edwards, hoping for Trevor Harris to just absolutely destroy that secondary. And I threw Janarion Grant in there, hoping for some returns. And then, of course, the Elks defense.
Who are you picking to win the games this week?
Home sweeps. That's
what I have as well.
It's hard to pick against that right now. It's Hamilton at Winnipeg. Like, that's probably your closest game of the week, like when it comes to pick 'em. But it's just hard to pick against, a team with the amount or the lack of roster turnover that Winnipeg's had. And I know Hamilton didn't have a lot either, but I just feel that this is one where Winnipeg can pull it out. Now, if that depth chart comes out and Andrew Harris is not playing and, Darvin Adams is for sure out, then that might change some minds, especially with Zach Collaros in there. But I took Winnipeg. Saskatchewan, BC was pretty easy for me. Toronto, Calgary, until Toronto proves that they're actually going to gel as a team. And then obviously Ottawa is going to go 0-14. So
let's lock in our predictions for the year. In the West, I have it Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatchewan, BC. In the East, I have Hamilton, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. The Grey Cup, the Ticats beating the Elks. My MOP is Jeremiah Mazzoli. My MOC is Hergy Mayala. Now, I get with the Bombers finishing first, a lot needs to happen there. Zach Collaros needs to be healthy all season for that to happen. If he goes down, the Bombers are in deep trouble. But I don't know. I still do think maybe even if Winnipeg doesn't finish first, there's still the team that's built for November and this year, December football tie.
Well, and they came in to the playoffs in 2019 as the 3 seed in the West.
They did.
So it's not like it can't be done.
Well, so, what's your standings looking like?
Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, BC. And then Hamilton, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa.
Your Grey Cup.
Oh, Grey Cup? Man. Calgary beats Hamilton.
Whoa. You just want to go back to 2014.
MOP. Man, if Edmonton finishes first in that West division, I think it almost becomes the Trevor Harris show.
It's a good call.
So I'd go with Trevor Harris there. And then MOC, I like that Hergy Mayala pick. Tavon Smith.
Whoa.
Maybe he comes out of nowhere.
Too.
If you got a guy like Trevor Harris, you have to spread the ball out. I'm just going to go a clean sweep with the Elks.
Whoa.
I'm going to get fired. aren't I?
We'll remember this in December.
Andrew's looking for another co-host, I think.
There it is, our predictions for the CFL season. I'm just so glad it's here. Let's tell you about Roomy. If you've got cold drafts, flickering lights, and you don't know where that leak is coming from, Roomy's Ask a Home Inspector service can help you with that. Connect with a certified professional home inspector by phone or video call and get your questions answered. Roomy will let you know what's easily fixable with a little DIY or when you might need to call in some professional help. Visit roomy.ca, that's RUMI.ca, and book your Ask a Home Inspector appointment today. I'm so glad it is finally here. Rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher. Join us on CFL Fantasy and CFL Pick'em. We'll talk to you after the games on Monday.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.